All right, my friends, I appreciate you all coming. My name is Jason Caston, and I'm an internet church developer and a author and all that good stuff with TD Jakes Ministries out of Dallas. And today we're going to talk about taking your social media to the next level, or as this book I've written right here, how to get 1 million social media fans. So we're going to talk about that today, and I'm going to take you guys through some of the strategies, techniques, and processes we use to take the ministry I work for from about a couple hundred followers and on Facebook and a very small Twitter following to 1 million plus fans on Facebook, 1.7, I believe, and about 1.1 million Twitter followers in about, we did it about 3 years. So the stuff that I'm gonna tell you today is not something that can happen overnight, but the ministry, even though it was a very large ministry when I got there, they did not know how to use social media at all. Matter of fact, they were not using social media. So therefore, once we started applying these strategies that I'm gonna talk about with you all today, then that's when we started to see the type of growth that we saw. We saw a variety of networks that we were using that things started to go right on, and overall we saw it, the social media properties increase from, like I said, a couple hundred followers and even smaller than that on Twitter to 1 million plus on Facebook, 1.7 I believe, it might be 1.8 now, and then 1.1 on Twitter. So we've actually done it a couple times, me and the team that I work with. Okay, now, again, this, first and foremost, tell you a few things. This book, you can follow us on Twitter at 1 million fans. That's the Twitter address. And then the website for this book is 1millionsocialmediafans.com. Okay? Let's get started. First and foremost, why is social media important in ministry? It's an interactive, two-way conversation. It's a way for people to reach the ministry. It's a faster, immediate connection, immediate response, and more people can be reached right where they are. That was the first and foremost thing that we started to look at when we were developing this strategy. What is it that we know we had the content, and we knew we had the content for a long time, but how can we get this content out using our social media channels to this audience that we felt like could grow at such an enormous rate, and how can we get it to them in a fast and effective and a streamlined manner, basically coming up with this content strategy. But one thing I want to keep in mind is social media, in that it being interactive, it's sometimes I find that churches don't understand the interactive part. They understand the media part, but they don't understand the social part. And that's a lot of organizations. Now, I'm not just going to single out churches, but a lot of organizations don't understand the social part of it. A lot of people believe that when they're on social media, if their church has a presence there, then they're able to access the ministry 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, we do understand that staffing resources limitations and staffing limitations make it so that we can't respond to everybody with every single request that they have, but we don't want to be the organization, the church, the business, the ministry that is so arrogant that we continue to push information out, but yet when someone responds to us and wants to interact with us and wants us to do real ministry, then we don't respond. And so that's one of the key things. Again, with social media being a faster, immediate connection, and immediate response, then people are looking for, they connect with you and they like your page, they follow you on Twitter, that's an immediate thing. So they feel connected to do ministry with you. So you have to look at it that in addition to looking for the solutions that we know the ministry and the church has, people are also looking to partner with you in ministry as well. And what social media does is it provides us with an opportunity to take ministry to the people. So as opposed to waiting for people to come to the building or during the week, midweek service and weekend services, you now have the opportunity with social media to take ministry to the people, to push out ministerial content that they could access and carry along with them, because they carry their mobile devices with them everywhere they go. They carry their laptops, their desktops, not their desktops, but their laptops and their tablets with them, everywhere they go. And now when they open up those devices, they're able to connect with the ministry anytime, any place. Let's look at the top social networks. Facebook, 1 billion. YouTube, people don't look at YouTube as far as being a social network, but it is, in addition to being the second largest search engine. It has 600 million. Twitter, 500 million. Google Plus, 343 million. I think that's actually 400 million now. Instagram, over 100 million. Pinterest, 15 million. So we're seeing that these top networks, have a large following. If you're doing international ministry, then you have in China, Sina Weibo is the largest network with 400 million. One of the largest networks with 400 million. Qzone has 530 million, and Renren has 130 million. And these networks have grown to these large sizes because Facebook, Twitter, YouTube is blocked in those areas. Even I believe they have a video network. I want to say. Utah or something like that has just now become one of the largest. They combine with somebody else and they become one of the largest video networks because they don't use YouTube out there as well. Okay, so those are the largest networks. Again, when we're coming up with a strategy, we're looking at these networks that we want to start with and work with because this is where all the people are at. So this is how you want to make sure that you're able to connect with your audience on these networks. Now, if we're looking at these networks, let's look at some of the things, the key information that we need to know about these networks. Facebook, by far, and most people are spending the most amount of time, average minutes per user there at 18. Pinterest, people are spending a large amount of time at Pinterest at 16. And then, or is that 14? I'm sorry. YouTube, 10 minutes, average user spending 10 minutes there. Twitter was 6 minutes. And then Google Plus with 5 minutes. So when you're looking at this information, again, this data that we're laying out here, we're seeing that these users are spending a lot of time on these social networks. So because they're there, that's when we want to start putting this ministry and this ministerial content on these networks where the people are already at. Okay? Now, once we have this, we got to start looking at the main thing, the main component about how we were able to achieve the success we were with the social networks, and that's because we had a strategy. So we looked at our strategy, and we didn't just set up a Facebook page and a Twitter page and then hope that they came. We actually had a strategy behind how these things were going to work. We didn't let everything fall on the pastor. We actually had a person on our staff that decided to take control of the social networking platforms, which the only two we used at the time was Facebook and Twitter, and decided to start pushing out this content. And the person on our staff that decided to do that was myself, because nobody else wanted to do it. They didn't care about Twitter, they didn't care about Facebook at 2010 when I started working with them, but I knew that we had enough content to start pushing information out. So when we're looking at our ministries, one of the things when we're developing this content or this strategy, first we got to look at, not trying to put everything on the pastor, but who's going to champion the cause? Who's going to be the one to gather the information and the content from the ministry and start funneling that out to the various social networks? That person needs to be identified, as well as what tools you will use to distribute that content. One person doing all of this, going to each and every social media network, as they're going to continue to grow, that will get kind of tiresome. So you want to use like a tool like, say, a Hootsuite or something like that, that will help distribute this content. So we use Hootsuite quite often. We go back and forth. The question of, we had a question with Facebook trying to determine if they were going to give preference to tools, whether you post natively or you post using third-party tools like Hootsuite and stuff like that. What we found after doing research is actually Facebook's EdgeRank, which is their formula they use to what goes into your Facebook newsfeed, is they were initially penalizing third-party posting tools. So if you posted using Hootsuite or some other third-party tools, then they were penalizing that. Then it was a big uproar about it, then they stopped. So now they currently have stopped, but as you know, Facebook changes it when they feel like it because that's their network and they do what they want to do. So right now, if you post something from, say, status update from Hootsuite or something, you'll still get the same amount of push in the Facebook news feed as if you posted it natively through Facebook. On another note, though, if you post a video, now, normally we grab a video, we put a link to YouTube, and Facebook gives you that little video that pops up right underneath the post. Okay, those posts do not get the same amount of push and edge rank as if you post natively through Facebook. Facebook prefers if you post video through them. Why? Because they want to control the video content. If you post it to YouTube and then you post it to Facebook, then the video content is being controlled by Google, who really runs the internet. All right? So that's one of the things that Facebook does. Facebook basically is using their edge rank formula the same way Google uses their search engine formula, and that's how they control what happens in your Facebook news feed. Because the Facebook news feed is really what runs Facebook. Okay, very rarely do we see people going to actual pages and scrolling down the pages and reading through the content that's put out. If your information, your content doesn't appear in the news feed, then people are not connecting with you as much as if having the expectation that they're coming to your page. They're just not doing that. Okay, so continuing on with how are you going to manage it? A tool like Hootsuite will help you manage that. We use Hootsuite for Twitter, Facebook fan pages, Google+, and LinkedIn. There are actual add-ons that you can use Hootsuite for Tumblr. You can also use it for, there was one additional one, Vimeo. You can also use it to post to Vimeo. All right, so now we got the strategy. We figured out who's going to gather all this content from the ministry to push out on these various networks. And so now we have to look at, what do church users want in social media? And they're looking for personality, the pulse of the ministry, and the feel of how the ministry operates. They're looking for relevance, touch with how the church and biblical principles are relevant to current issues in their lives. All right, make sure you understand that part. They want to know how the issues that the church is talking about is relevant to their lives. That's what pulls them in. So when we're looking at the content we want to distribute as a ministry, what's relevant to our users' lives, what's relevant to the issues that are going on in real life today, because those are the issues when somebody sees your pastor does a video about an issue that's affecting a lot of people now, then that's the stuff that'll be shared. Okay, so you want to cater the content to what's affecting your users' lives so that they can share it, and again, it starts to resonate and build your online audience. Next, we're looking at frequency and consistency. Post enough to inform them, but not enough to become bothersome. So I got 2 to 4 times daily. And I'm actually going to give you guys an actual strategy, an example of an actual strategy. So I just put 2 to 4 times daily, but I didn't say which networks and all that good stuff. We're going to actually get into that. But the reason I said frequency and consistency, because consistent content wins out. That is the number one thing. And I'm going to talk about that in a second, but the main thing is we had a consistent content strategy. No matter it was 2010, a random week in June, to last week, end of May 2013, we always have content going out on our social networks. We consistently have content going out. There has not been one day that has went by that we haven't put out something. And that's the hard part for churches to continually, or any organization to continually come up with content that needs to be distributed. That's hard. I've seen, whether it be in academia, whether it be nonprofit organizations, corporate America, they cannot continually have content coming from their organization pushed out via the social networks. And that's something that needs to occur. It needs to become a marketing channel like any other channel in your nonprofit business. Okay, that's very important. And we'll talk about different kinds of content and what's engaging and stuff like that, and give you content examples. But the point there I'm trying to get is consistent content. And next, information. They want to know what's going on with the church without having to log off their network. They want you to bring the church to them. So basically, if all I want to do is check Facebook from my mobile phone, I want to stay connected with my church via Facebook on my mobile phone. So that means the things you have going on with your ministry that you put out in other channels, if you have announcements that you put out that we're used to, and I used to get my announcements at my church via a bulletin when I walked in. Well, my younger sister, who's 18, who loves Facebook, wants to stay connected with the church via announcements through the fan page. That's how she likes to receive stuff that's going on with the church. Or if the church is on Instagram or something like that. She wants to stay connected on the channels that she likes, as opposed to getting that Sunday bulletin that she's not going to look at. Okay? Because really she doesn't pick her head up from her phone ever. So that's just what it is. But if we have a generation that doesn't pick their head up from their phone, and we see that with the youth, and then we got another generation coming up, and this will probably be me as well, that's looking at wearable technology like Google Glass. So now instead of putting my head down, I'm looking right at you, but not looking at you because I got my Google glasses on. Then we have to learn how to take the content we have and put it and distribute it in the way that people will receive it and the devices that they're using. Instead of trying to make them conform to the way that we think that they should be receiving the content, we let the church evolve. If we don't conform, then the way things will be now is instead of me looking at my Bible on my iPad, which I love my iPad, then my dad would have gave me my first Bible on scrolls, old parchment, you know, because what do we need the printing press for? I don't want that technology. So therefore we have to look at, you know, the technology evolves, then we don't have to change the message, we don't have to change the content, let's change or evolve the delivery method. That's what we're doing. And that's the main thing that social media is doing now. It's just a new delivery method for the message and the good news that we know has the solutions to the problems that the world has. So, that being stated, what's our message? This was our message. 3 things we were looking for: inspiration, information, communication. Okay? First and foremost, inspiration. We start every day off with a daily devotional. All right? That's our most engaging form of content. 2 or 3 lines, daily devotional, and we just put that out and people love it. All right, next, information. Again, we talked about that relevant information going on with the church. We put that information out. People now, they feel informed. On whatever network they're on, they're getting the information they need to stay connected with their ministry. So we put that information out. Number 3, communication. Social media is a 2-way street, hence the term social. So we made sure we communicated. If we put out, we put an update, say, hey, you can watch our live service right now, here's a link. Somebody responds, hey, that link isn't working. We responded back to them. Somebody has an issue, you know, it could be a personal issue or something like that. We have a pastor come on there and actually respond to them, hey, you know, maybe you need to take this offline, you know, to deal with the issue or what have you. But if people reach out via these social networks as much as we can and as much as our resources allow us to, people resources and financial resources, we try and stay communicated with them because we don't know which person is trying to reach out to us via this social network and they feel like this is the last answer they have to their life of problems. So we make sure that we're available. All right? So inspiration, information, and communication. Okay? That's our message. Now, speaking of, let me sidebar for a second. Someone asked me a question last week. We were talking about followers, fans, followers, YouTube views, etc. And they said, well, you told me to use this strategy, information, inspiration, communication, and that'll help build up my online audience. But I need some audience members. You know, I want to build up my social media fans now. Can't I just buy them? Which I'm not sure if you all know, there's some pages out there or services out there where you can buy 5,000 Twitter fans. You can buy 5,000 Facebook fans and Instagram, Pinterest, all kinds of stuff. You can buy all that stuff. So I said, well, it's good if you're just about the numbers, then that's fine. Go ahead, buy them all. Buy them all. But you have to look at what is the purpose of your strategy. If the purpose of your strategy, your end game, is that you're trying to connect and develop the relationships and so on and so forth, then you know you're actually going to have to put in the time and the work. It's like basically an online relationship. If you want to develop it and have it reciprocal and stuff like that, then you got to put the time in. But if you're just going for sheer numbers, then go ahead and buy them, but don't be upset when in the future stuff goes wrong. When Facebook cracks down on those illegal, those Facebook fans that you bought because they control their network, which at the time when you bought the Facebook fans wasn't nothing wrong with it, but Facebook decided you have too many fans that have bot accounts, and so we're going to shut down your whole page that you've been putting all this work and effort in, and now you're parading this page around because you have 2 million plus followers, and Facebook shut it down because they felt like it. Okay. Next, Twitter, you can buy a million plus Twitter fans, you can buy YouTube views, you can buy YouTube followers, but just understand that, when you skirt the system that these networks have set up, and Facebook has it set up because Facebook is a business. As much as a social network, Facebook is a business. They want you to use their channels to get fans. You promote those posts, you pay for ads, you use their channels to get fans when it comes to paying for fans. Likewise with Google, they want you to use Google Ads. Twitter wants you to use promoted tweets and the advertised tweets, advertising your account, stuff like that. So when you step outside the lines that they set and you start buying fans and stuff like that, just understand that you're basically putting yourself in a position where they can and possibly will suspend your account and shut you down. All right? So that was a quick sidebar as far as a question that that was asked to me. Let's jump back to this. We're talking about our message. All right? Again, we're talking about content. What specifically type of stuff should your church put out? Because we need to be specific. All right? And you can apply this to your church, your nonprofit, your ministry, your business, etc. This type of stuff. Daily inspiration or devotional. The daily inspiration is something encouraging from your organization that gives people a reason to stay connected with you. How do you enhance their lives with what your organization offers? That's the type of stuff you're looking at. Usually start your day off with that. We also do another one in the evening with that because we have an international audience. So our domestic audience, national audience, sees all that stuff in their morning. We start their day off, but at 11 o'clock midnight, when we put it out again, our international audience is just seeing it for the first time because this is their daytime. So we're starting their days off as well. Links to service times, live streaming, weekly events at the church, links to digital flyers, ministry updates, and also this PowerPoint will be available to you all as a download. I'll give you the link at the end of this. But here's some information that you actually can push out. This is the actual content that we pushed out that people were most engaged with, starting, of course, first and foremost with the daily inspiration and the devotion. But this is the content we actually used that increased our engagement. When it increased our engagement, that's when people saw, you see on your friends that somebody commented on a status update or something from TD Jakes Ministries. You go check it out. Oh, wow, that really touches my life. I like that word. You comment on it, you like it, your friends see it, they comment on it, they like it, and it just resonates. And that type of stuff, this type of information that we're putting out, kept people informed. They felt like no matter when they logged on, the ministry was being brought to them, and that's how we had exponential growth. Consistent content using this type of information that they were looking for. All right? But we kept going with it. We looked at two things that have taken social media to another level the last 18 months, and that's visual content and mobile access. All right, if we look at the top networks in the world, we see that their main usage is based on visual content and high mobile usage. All right? What we've seen is the rise of visual social media. Social media originally, when it started out, was just it was a lot of text-based stuff. But what we've seen most recently is the visual social media. So when we look at how we used to learn when we were younger, we saw that young kids use picture books. That was engaging. That's what held their attention. So now we're seeing social media take that same approach. We're going to pull you in with multimedia. We're going to pull you in with photos and videos. That's how you're going to stay engaged. So now when you post a picture, you see a lot more friends on your social media, or a lot more people are much more engaged with it because of the visual aspect. We're seeing Facebook timeline. The Facebook timeline, what Facebook did, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, was they revamped your home page, your profile page. They revamped it, and they did the fan pages as well, to turn into a way to tell your entire story online. And that's what they wanted to do. And I'll tell you why in a second. Also, we're going to talk about Twitter photo album, Twitter background, Twitter cover photo, because when Facebook started implementing these visual features, Twitter did the same. Google Plus did the same. All right? Then we saw networks that came up that were just all visually based. Pinterest, pictures and video. Instagram is a mobile network, and we'll talk about mobile social networking as well. That was all pictures. That's all pictures. And then Vine, which is just mobile video. Okay? All right, Facebook timeline. We're talking about telling your story via Facebook. All right, and you see how Facebook figured out, and if you look at this, Facebook figured out that if we get you engaged with telling your story online, when people do actually come to your page, the few that do, then you'll be able to tell your story with these milestones and all these visual cues and stuff like that to get to one thing, because they did all this before they IPO'd, which led here. This is an ad. So now, Facebook, as great as a social network is a business. So they have to keep you engaged long enough to show you some ads. And so that's what they're doing. But when you're looking at how you want to interact with your audience and you're trying to build your social media audience and your Facebook audience, and we use Facebook in general, you have to understand that people are looking for this visual content coming from your ministry. So in addition to doing a daily devotional, you might want to take that same devotional and as you put it out on Facebook as 2 or 3 lines of text, then take that same devotional, put it on a nice picture of someone running through a field of daisies, and make that a meme and put it out on Instagram and Pinterest. Now we got that great quote of someone running through a field of daisies, and we all feel happy. Okay, that's type of stuff. Take that same quote that you might have, that daily devotional that you got from your pastor from last weekend's service, and take the actual clip from the service. That actual clip might be, 6 seconds long, 10 seconds long, 15 seconds long. Take that and put that out. Put that on Facebook. Put that out on YouTube. Now you got people engaging with you on these video networks. Put it out on Pinterest. Now you got people engaging with you on these video networks. It's the same content. You're redistributing it in different manners to different networks, because that's how people want to receive it. Okay, because people receive things in different ways. Okay, just like they learn in different ways. Matter of fact, Paul, my friend, earlier today you said people were learning in different ways. What were the ways you said? It was tactile, auditory, and kinesthetic. All right, auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. Yep, I like that example. And I'm looking at how people receive things and basically interact online. I see some of those similarities. Definitely. All right, continuing on. Now let's look at Twitter, taking advantage of Twitter. We're seeing the way that people are, Twitter, when they saw Facebook update and start adding these visual features, then they follow suit. Got a cover photo on Twitter. We got a photo album that keeps your videos and your photos there, except for your Instagram photos. Once Facebook bought Instagram, then Twitter gave them the boot and told them they couldn't participate in the photo album anymore. So now when you put a Instagram photo up, unless you got an add-on on your browser, you have to click it and go to Instagram, go to actually that page. So if you can post your photos on Twitter natively and people can watch them in the stream without having to click to go anywhere else, that's good. But if you want to put on Instagram, Instagram is definitely a hot network, so it's, you can put it there and people will click and go there. But you want to let people get access to your content with as few clicks as possible, ideally. But we're talking about how, what's easiest for you. But anyway, you're seeing that these visual cues on here, these visual aspects, so we're seeing that this visual social media taking shape. Likewise, this plays in the mobile social media as well, because 50% of Twitter users are mobile. So if we're talking about 500 million, I believe Twitter users, 500 million plus, it's obviously always growing. 250 million are accessing it via mobile. Next, we saw Google Plus. Google Plus follows suit. They got a huge cover photo. I could even put it all in here. Their cover photo is the entire huge. The opening screen is all their cover photo, and then the other aspects of visual aspects that Google Plus has. And Google Plus is very, very similar to Facebook in those visual aspects. So I won't belabor that point, but we'll talk about Google Plus a little more in depth later on. Likewise, we talked about Pinterest, photos and videos, an entire network built around photos and videos. I mean, it doesn't get more obvious than that social media is visual, if an entire network can be created on photos and videos. All right. And then likewise, we're talking about mobile social networking, and we see that Instagram, when Facebook bought it for what was, they said $1 billion, but I think after the stock price, they brought it down to 700 million or something like that. But anyway, Facebook needed some type of mobile strategy, so they went and bought Instagram to give them a mobile presence, and immediately Instagram jumped up to just like, I mean, millions of users signed up for it as soon as Facebook bought it. But Instagram is just photos and filters, but for all intents and purposes, it's just photos that people are interacting with from their mobile devices. They do have a web interface, but for the most part, the majority of people interact with Instagram, from their mobile devices. So that shows you, in addition to visual social media, we're seeing the rise of mobile social media. We're also seeing that with Vine and Social Cam and stuff like that. And then again, Twitter's 50% mobile. Facebook is about 45% mobile. I think 488 million users of Facebook are mobile, and 25% of YouTube viewing is mobile, and there are 33 million users on Foursquare. So that's another mobile network in itself. Okay, and so now we're talking about visual social media. Here's a good thing, a good kind of guide that we use. When we get any type of content, we look at, okay, what type of content do you want us to push out? And somebody will say, okay, we got a quote from the pastor this weekend that we want to push out to our social networks. It's something he said that was astounding. We got a video clip of it. So they sent us a video clip, okay? So from that video clip, we look at, all right, can we push it out to these 7 networks right here? All right, scratch LinkedIn. 6 networks. Can we push it out? And we say, okay, if it's longer than 6 seconds, well, there goes Vine. So we got those 5 networks we're trying to push it out onto, okay? Get it on YouTube. Once we get on YouTube, then we can put it into Pinterest, and we can put it on onto Twitter and Google Plus as well, and then we also push it out on Facebook. We look at the quote and we say, all right, well, can we use that quote as some type of, can we put it out as a daily devotional? Yeah, the quote was good. Put out a daily devotional. So now we put it out as a devotional as well as the video. Okay, and then also we might send it to one of our graphic designers and say, okay, we don't want to put it out as a devotional, but we want to make some type of graphic out of it, some type of meme or something like that. We let them make might take a picture of the pastor who's actually preaching while he was saying that, and he got this, this authoritative pose where he just looks like he's just, parting the seas and all that type of stuff, and he's saying it, and we got that. We put the quote underneath it. We push it out on Instagram. We might put the picture on Pinterest as well, and we, push it out through all our networks. But that's how we look at the content as far as once we get it, what networks can we distribute it to? And that's pretty much what we're looking at every time with the content, because we want to know how do we engage the most amount of people regardless of the network. All right, and we talked about this, the rise of mobile social media, and we talked about some of the stats as well. But what I didn't touch on real quick that I want to actually get more into is we're talking about mobile social media. What I've seen churches not really key in on is Foursquare and check-ins and check-in specials and the type of mobile media that's built around check-in specials and check-ins and stuff like that. First and foremost, when somebody checks in from your on Foursquare, and I know Facebook has a check-in feature as well, but we'll use Foursquare since they're the leader in the space. When somebody checks in, you want to make sure that it's usually, when they check in, they usually broadcast it on Twitter and sometimes on Facebook as well. So when you go into Facebook, log in as a church, and you claim that location, say this is our location, this is our church, then you can put your Twitter address in there. So when somebody checks in, it automatically puts your Twitter address. It says they checked in at your church, and it has your @ and your Twitter address. That, and from a business sense, makes them a marketer every time they check in, because your information is going out to their social media followers. So you want to make sure that in addition to claiming that place, you want to make sure that you put your Twitter account in there, because you want people to market and get more, have as many people as possible see, the social media properties of your ministry. Likewise, if you have check-in specials where you say anybody who checks in, today, we'll let you get a free CD from, the store or something like that, which I think we did. We gave away CDs that we normally give away anyway. And we said anybody who checks in, go to the store, show them the check-in special, and you'll get a free CD. Well, we had a lot more people checking in, and because a lot more people were checking in, then we saw our Twitter followers increase, because as they checked in, their Twitter fans saw that they checked in at that church, and then they started following us. So that's the type of stuff you want to engage people in different ways, and use Foursquare as a way to engage people as well. Okay, a lot of churches overlook that. They don't really think about Foursquare and how you can engage people, but if these people are checking in anyway when they're coming into your place, your location, your church, your ministry, then engage them. Use that. Use that as a way to do ministry. So we gave them that CD. I'm not sure if they listen to it or not. I wouldn't listen to a CD, but that's just me. I'd rather have a digital download. But if they listen to it, you don't know whose life was impacted by that type of giveaway. So you want to engage them in that network as well. All right, question I always get: which network is the best? They want to know, which network is the best? What network do you suggest? Which network is the best? And I always say, whatever network your church knows how to use, that's the best one for you. If you have a team full of Twitter junkies, then Twitter is the best network for you to use. Okay, if your people on staff know how to use Facebook, then Facebook is the best network from you. But don't try and jump on every network just because you see everybody else on every network. Start with the ones you have the people resources to use and your team knows how to use, and then start and go from there. We started with Facebook and Twitter. Those are the ones we knew how to use, and we went from there, and we jumped. Then we jumped on YouTube real heavily, and then we went to Google+, and then we went to Pinterest and Instagram. But we didn't start and jump on everything initially. We started working with the ones that we knew how to use. Okay? All right, continue. With each network, it has its own community and its own way to best use it. So I caution you to learn how to use each network effectively and then move on to the next one. Unless you get somebody that just comes in and says, look, I know how to use all these networks. I would like to establish a church presence on all these networks, and then you go ahead and do that. But as long as you can trust them and make sure they use it correctly and they don't hold the network hostage, from you or anything like that. But you don't have to be on all of them, but it's good to be on as many as your staff can handle, because you can reach people on those networks. All right? So let's talk about, before we get into some specific strategies, I want to ask real quick, now, how many of you all are on Facebook? Everybody? Okay, everybody's on Facebook. That's good. That's good. Now, one thing I want to say real quick about Facebook is how many of you have put calls to actions in any of your posts? And by calls to action, I mean you ask them to do something. Good, 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 good. What I found on Facebook is Facebook updates get 4 times more engagement when you ask them to do something, ask them to share, like this. Put the call to action in. The reason I say put a call to action in is because you want them to participate, give them the opportunity to participate in the ministry with you, okay? You don't have to do it every time, but I would say 30 to 50% of the time we put a call to action in our social media. We tell them, if you like this tweet, retweet it. If you agree with this, like it and share it. We let them participate in the ministry with us. And so and from a business sense, you're basically giving them a call to action. What businesses do very well, a call to action, because you're turning them into marketers and letting them help promote and push whatever it is you're putting out there. But from a church perspective, you're letting them participate in the ministry with you. And so that's what you want to do. All right. Continuing on, how many of you all are on Twitter? Okay, good, 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 good. Now, another thing about Twitter, and we'll talk about this real quick because we're talking about, I'm going to go into specific networks and how to best effectively use them. How many of you all use hashtags often? Okay. Hashtags is only 24% of tweets have hashtags, but hashtags is the way you control the conversation. Specifically, we use this conference. Biola.digital is the hashtag. So if somebody wants to, is not here at the conference, the way they can keep up with it is using the hashtag and stuff like that. So what I found with with churches is they don't effectively use hashtags to control the conversation, whether it be about a topic or using a hashtag to say something about their church. But you want to continue to control the conversation or participate as much as you can in the conversations that's being had on social media, because people are having conversations on social media about your ministry and about other things. So you want to effectively use the hashtag in your social media strategies. We use it a lot for conferences. In our ministry, we use it a lot for conferences, and we use it for down Sundays for, we use it for called TPH new visitors. And that way, we ask people during service, we stop, sometime in service before, maybe for the offering or something, we say, hey, if you're new, we're a tweeting church. Go in and send us a message, and we give them an email address. We say, use the hashtag, I think it's TPH new visitors or something like that, and let us know you were here. And then we have somebody who's monitoring that, responds to them, and then we also tell them, we have a free download or a CD to give you or something like that. But we use that hashtag to track people who are offline or visiting us at the service, to monitor them in their engagement. What we also found, though, was people who were online watching the live service started participating in that as well. Hey, this is my first time here, I'm watching online, and they used the hashtag as well. So then it just started to grow. So that's the reason I say use the hashtags and let that stuff start to happen. Okay? All right, let's continue on. Let's talk about specific strategies. All right, when to post. We use a post. We usually post about 3 to 5 times a day, and I'll talk about specific networks in a second. But we try and get a post out between 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. Afternoons 11 to 3. We try and get a late afternoon post. Sometimes we put that together and just make it sometime between 11 and 6. We look for an evening post, 6 to 11 p.m. and 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And this is usually could be, whether it be Twitter or Facebook or Google+. This is kind of a loose guideline of when we're trying to push stuff out. Morning, we start off with a daily devotional. We're looking for something to inspire and engage our users to start their day off. Afternoon, we're looking for some type of multimedia post or something that they can engage with. Usually it's a video or some type of graphic. Late afternoon or evening, we're looking for some type of either event going on or some type of link that we're putting out to some type of church event or something like that, conference or something along those lines, maybe a product. And then overnight, we're pushing out another devotional, a repeat of the devotional that we put out at 7. Reason being, our international audience, we want to make sure that they're able to see what was put out earlier. All right, now, talking about specific networks. Here's our guidelines we look at for our specific networks, Facebook and Google+. We try to post between 1 to 3 times a day on both those networks. Again, we're doing this via Hootsuite, so it's not a manual thing all the time. Twitter, trying to post at least 4 to 6 times a day, because we know that people, with Twitter, at any given time, I believe it's like 25 to 35% are logged on, so we're only getting about 25, 35% of our audience, so we got to keep posting stuff so that they're able to see it and engage with it. YouTube or Vine, trying to post at least 1 video a week. Pinterest, Instagram, at least 1 photo a week. Likewise, that same video that's on YouTube, we post to Pinterest. And then Foursquare, we try and do 1 check-in special a month. Again, the reason that I'm talking about this is because we're looking for consistency, consistent content, consistent strategy. Keep the flow coming of the content, because the ministry is always creating content. Every week the ministry is creating content. We just got to get it out to the people and let them interact with it on the networks that they want it to be on. Okay? Next. Analyze, optimize, repeat. This is what we do often. Me and my manager, me and him go back and forth. He's not a technical guy. He's a marketing guy, very much a marketing guy. So he looks at it from his marketing perspective. I'm more a little strategy, but more of a technical perspective. And then we got a writer who looks at these things, and we just analyze. We used to use Crowd Booster as a way to check some of our analytics, but we actually moved over to Hootsuite Analytics. And then we look at our Facebook Insights. We look at our Google social media analytics. We look at all this type of information and saw What was our response? What was our return on things we put out? What posts had the most engagement, the most interaction? And we started looking at all that type of stuff. We looked at, did we have calls to actions in our posts? What did our hashtags do? We actually have a hashtag tracking software that we found online that we use. And we look at the edgeраnkchecker.com, talking about Facebook's EdgeRank and what changes have they made, again, to the EdgeRank formula so that we can see how we can increase our engagement and stuff like that. And so we analyze all of this, we optimize it, and then we repeat. Again, the reason I'm telling you all of this is because even though this process has, we take a lot of steps, we have a lot of, a very in-depth approach to how we looked at social media, we felt like we wanted to make sure that we didn't give it, half effort, because we looked at it as a form of ministry. We look at the ministries that the church has, and the men's ministry, the women's ministry, the new visitors ministry, stuff like that. And the people that were leading those ministries really are passionate about that. So when we said if we're gonna look at social media as a form of ministry, then we want to make sure that we give it the type of effort that it deserves, and we continue to optimize it and make sure it's the best form of ministry, and we have the best content that we can get out. And so again, social media is ever evolving. It's always changing. It's ever evolving. It's inexact science, but these are some best practices that have yielded the results that I spoke about earlier with the million+ followers and fans and all that good stuff. Next thing we did, we added social media in our websites. And I mean, and when we integrated into our websites, I mean from the aspect of not just putting on there our social media channels like, hey, we're on Facebook, but no, we made it so that you can share what you're doing from our pages. This being that, again, if you're in a church service, and we see it more often now, and you want to share something on Twitter, the pastor says something that resonated with you, then more often than not, we see people pull out their phone and they'll share it right then. So what we looked at was, if we've got this great content on our websites, why don't we give people the capability to share it while they're on the website right then? So if somebody's watching the live broadcast or the live stream, then we gave them the opportunity to share it right then. Share where you're at. Tell people, hey, I'm watching this service right now online. So and that's the way you want to make sure you integrate that into your website. The one we found that was really easy was sharethis.com. It was the easiest way to take a couple lines of code, add it to our webpage, and we were able to share our entire site. And we looked at the main high traffic sites to share. We didn't want to share everything because we do have some sensitive pages that we don't want people sharing. If you're looking for some life issues that you're dealing with, we don't want people, to necessarily share that. We just let them share the high traffic pages that people would want to let their social media fans know that they're here, especially if they're coming to our homepage a lot, our live stream, our media center and stuff like that. Again, you don't want people to, don't make it like your church is a secret, your ministry is a secret. Give people a way to announce and promote and participate in ministry with you, and share your ministry with as many people as possible. All right, so continuing on, we talked about the last thing we did. We talked about Google Plus for a quick second. I mentioned it for a second. And I talked about the search engine optimization and the reasons people are on Google Plus. Google Plus is not so much a network. If Google runs the internet, you're on Google Plus because it's search engine optimized. But we found a feature on Google Plus that we really, really liked, and we started to see a good response, which a way that people in our ministry started to interact with people in a much more intimate manner, and that was Google Hangouts. All right, we talked about Google Hangouts. We saw, real-time connections and interactions, and then we saw that you could automatically record it and live stream it straight through YouTube.com. So we started putting Google Hangouts into our social media strategy. We started using it for conferences, and we started using it for example, we had a conference about 2 months ago. And what the pastor did was he contacted all the keynote speakers, and they got on a Google Hangout, and they just talked about the topics that they were going to present at the conference. We streamed that video live so that people could watch via YouTube while it was going on, and then when it was done, since YouTube recorded it, we packaged that up, let the editors put a front end and a back end on it, and we pushed it out via our social networks. So that way now, when we're generating excitement about the conference and people want to know, hey, what's that session going to be about, or what's that pastor going to talk about, we'll check out the Google Hangout, because he actually stated what it was going to be about. In addition to the regular marketing materials we already see, the flyers and the JPEGs and all the stuff we push out, but that Google Hangout was a interactive experience of them talking about what actually was going to occur. So then we looked at 5 ways you can use Google Hangouts on there, for church, and some of these we actually use, all of them we haven't just yet, but you can stream your sermons or Bible studies live or record them on YouTube. Oh, actually, let me ask first. Anybody using Google Hangouts on there? Okay, sweet. You can stream your sermons or Bible studies live, record them on YouTube, interactive Bible study. This was one that we're actually implementing now, interactive Bible study using Google Hangouts. So that's definitely something. And then, of course, making it recorded and keeping it on our media channel. We looked at interactive counseling sessions. The counseling department is still trying to figure out exactly how they want to approach this because it doesn't restrict people from having to come on site for counseling sessions. A couple couples were interested in that, so I'm interested in seeing how that turns out. Special events I was talking about, conference previews, webinars, and then we also use it sometimes for podcasts, to push out quick podcasts that are not so professionally produced. So that's what we use Google Hangouts for, and I think it'd be a good option. So you can see, here's a little quick look at Google Hangouts. That's me doing a Google Hangout. This is what social media in the church hangout that I did before, and that was pretty fun. Finally, now with social media and what's coming in the future, what I believe is coming is I believe it'll be more integration to our lives, where the lines between offline and online will blur. So I believe we'll share more of our offline with our online. That's where I think social media is going to go. I think social media will help websites and our web usage customize to us. So I think that I'm not sure if you all have seen, you either searching for something on, say, Amazon or Google, and then you go to a website and there's ads for that thing you were searching for. I think social media is going to play more of a key role in that, but not through Facebook. It's going to be through Google, because Google pretty much controls the majority of that. And I'm not sure how Amazon is going to play into that, but there's going to be an e-commerce factor that's going to play into that as well. And then social media. This is what I really think is going to be an interesting approach to social media, and that's digital missions. And I think where ministries focus on niche networks around the world and develop strategies to reach members on those networks with the gospel. And I think that looking at missions from a digital perspective and the billions of users that are on social media and how the fact that it's only increasing and new networks are being developed, I think that digital missions is going to become, a new fertile ground for people who are very, who are technically savvy and have a desire to take the gospel to people that may have never seen it, never heard it, and reach millions of people from their laptops, desktops, or mobile devices. So that's where I think social media is really going to be effective when we start looking at the digital missionary field. And finally, as I stated before, you can get this presentation, ichurchmethod.com/biola.digital. The book is in the lounge, so you're able to get a copy of that for $15. And the website is 1millionsocialmediafans.com, and that's how you follow us on Twitter. So, are there any questions? Yes, sir.
So, one thing I've not heard much about this weekend, and I know that there's been an ebb and flow of interest in this, but I'm wondering about what your perspective, or maybe others' perspective, is about social bookmarking and how much play it's getting. It seems to me that could be a great opportunity, and I'm talking especially about, like a sort of like delicious stumble upon types of things, but I've not heard much about this week.
I haven't seen it in terms of used extensively. I've seen it used, but not on a level of significant impact. So that's probably why I haven't heard of it in any of the circles that I've listened to about social media in general. Only thing I know is social media, like I said, Delicious, I want to say Reddit, I think, stuff like that. You know, I know that they're great sources of news. I think because they're churches haven't figured out, and just to keep it in church perspective, how to adequately filter content through those channels, then the conversation isn't being had yet.
Right, and I think that Pinterest has to me, that's very much a type of social bookmarking,
Mm-hmm.
but it has a better, something about the style of it is real catchy, you know, but, yeah, I just didn't know if anyone else maybe, it just seems like that's something that, it seems like that's territory that could be exploited, but I just don't know, I don't see enough people doing it to know how to use it best.
Yeah, and I don't see it. I come across social bookmarking usually when somebody posts something on Reddit and it resonates, and then it becomes a story. So usually that's the only time. But other than that, again, from a church perspective, I haven't seen any churches at it or church tech people using it as effectively just yet. But then again, it's just a matter of time. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Jason, I'm curious to hear what you think about the whole use of the church's name versus the pastor's name. I know that,
Yep.
like in the examples that you gave, I think the Twitter handle is Bishop James.
Yes.
And is that the Twitter handle for the church as well? So basically, it's everything from the church is happening in his name, or is there a separate one for the church?
Good question. So what we did originally was, well, first to answer the question, we have multiple channels. We have church channels, and then we have channels that are based around him. The reason being is originally the majority of people that were familiar with our ministry were familiar with just him because of TV. So when you come across churches that are personality driven, basically pastor driven, then it's a different approach than when you come across a church that doesn't have a pastor that's driven like that, or a pastor that's invisible like that. Personally, we had to do that because of how the church was established before social media even came along, and the TV channel, the TV show, and all that type of stuff. But I personally think that it just depends on what's more visible to the people outside of the local area and how they will connect with your church. And that's what we had to look at. Me coming from Chicago to the church in Dallas, I didn't know the name of the church before I got there, but I knew the name of the pastor. So when we looked at the certain people that were connected with our church that were not born and raised there, we looked at their perspectives of outside of the, we'll say, 500,000 or 1 million people that live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. How do people view this ministry? And it was based on his name and what they see him do, TV shows, movies, and stuff like that. So we put the social media out through his name. Now our content strategy filters through both as far as the channels coming from the church. So it's like there's no disconnect between him and the church as far as the content, except for he may post some stuff that's personal to him every so often, but through his personal channel. But all the church content that goes through the church channels go through his channels as well.
There's a risk if you do if it's in the pastor's name. Of course, if for some reason the pastor leaves,
Mm-hmm.
or where the pastor retires or something like that,
Right.
and all of a sudden now the church doesn't have any of those followers or connections. I mean, maybe that you rename it or something like that, but there's a risk in that, I think, too, just to point that out.
Well, yeah, when you look at the checks and balances, so now that comes to checks and balances, who really controls that account?
Yeah.
And so, for all intents and purposes, being that he's the leader of the church and the CEO of the organization, and since this is being recorded, I'll say he controls it. From a technical perspective, it could be stated that other people control it if they're technically savvy, able to know how to. I'll leave it at that.
Well, and that's just something I think churches need to think about.
Absolutely.
Like when you're establishing that, so that in many cases the church doesn't stay, or the pastor doesn't stay for the life of the church, and so
Right.
you have to think, well, just in case something happens, we want to do stuff in the name of the church in case the pastor's not there.
Well, you know what? You brought up a good point. So let's address that. Checks and balances. who controls the accounts? Because the reason we use Hootsuite is because, one, in case, we want to give volunteers access to certain networks without them having logging into the network. So we control that by giving them accounts we control to Hootsuite, and then we tell you these are the networks you can post to. Then we say if you post, once we establish that trust factor, then we let them post, on behalf of the church, the ministry, what have you, as they feel so. But prior to that, then your posts have to be approved before that stuff goes up. So we use Hootsuite to have checks and balances because I've come across, I don't know how many churches where if it's not the website, then it's the social media accounts that are being held hostage by the visitor that went rogue or the person that was hired, and you fire. And we've seen this in corporate America as well. You fired the person on Friday and you forgot to take the social media logins from them. So now, and I can't even think of the account that I thought was just extremely hilarious. I can't think of the brand, but anyway, the person is still posting all through the weekend, bashing the company to no end and just exposing all the secrets and what have you, because the person who fired them, the HR, the manager, what have you, doesn't understand social media. So you fired them because you felt, for whatever reason, it could have been a cost-cutting measure, what have you, but you might not let them log in the building anymore, but they still control the Twitter account. So now you got a PR nightmare because, they're on there saying whatever they feel because you fired them and let them go. So we have a system of checks and balances using Hootsuite and so on and so forth, and Facebook managers profile and stuff, like admin profile manager, stuff like that, so that we make sure that social media accounts are not taken hostage by rogue visitors, not visitors, but volunteers or employees. So, and you have to do that in addition to, like you said, is it stuff in the pastor's name? Is it in the church's name? And stuff like that. The churches that I've worked with, the majority of them, the pastor does stay for the length of the church. He starts the church, he stays, and he usually passes away in the pulpit. So the church is usually built around the pastor more so. And it's a funny thing, I think about that. I heard Rick Warren say, and Rick Warren talks about, pastor or rock star pastors, pastor-driven churches, purpose-driven churches. So you really got to look at that as far as, but I'm not going to get to the theological perspective of that. We'll talk that later on. But I understand exactly what you're saying. Yes, sir.
What about establishing business rules for the church, in the social media space, speaking on behalf of the church, speaking on behalf of yourself, and then also having people that work at the church and how they're not allowed to speak on behalf of the church, or maybe they are allowed to some capacity. What have you set up for that for churches that you've worked with?
We have some guidelines, and I've had like a general set of guidelines. The reason being that I won't say it hasn't caught on. I have some guidelines that I've given churches. They're not, I think they just are not understanding social media enough for it to be an issue or it to be a benefit. If you follow these rules, you think, okay, this will be a benefit and you guys can adhere to this, but they're still learning how to effectively use social media. So before they can get in trouble for posting something from their personal account that besmirches the church or something like that, they're still trying to understand, why do I need to post anything about the church at all? So stuff like that. So once we get past that learning curve, then there is a set of guidelines, but the church, just in my experience, the church that I've worked with are just not there yet.
Well, just like we heard last night during his speech that he accidentally posted his password on.
Oh, Michael Hyatt, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so
I know, right?
Those types of things where, especially if you're a social media manager and you're managing 50, 100 accounts or whatever, you could accidentally post something for your, the bread company that you're managing, staying onto your church's account or whatever. You can get things mixed up. So that's where the whole business rules come into play for social media.
And we have, like I said, I have some that I give to them, and HR tries to develop some, when they hire new people. Here's our social media policy. But, just to be transparent, even though the policies are there because of the administrative approach to it, the understanding isn't there just yet. Right. So that's the only thing. But they're on their way. They're learning. Any other questions? All right. I appreciate you all. Thank you for your time.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.